Yeah, so we hinted that there were some problems, and you heard me even ask some questions as we were going through this.
Mhm.
What are some of the issues with relying so heavily on this, and why should we be concerned about the criticism of this current diagnostic tool?
It has been established that the Beighton score ability to truly reflect generalized joint hypermobility is questionable, and this is concerning.
All right, so in this segment, we're going to be summarizing the points made by Malik in a 2021 article. And the purpose of their paper was to review the validity and the reliability of the Beighton score as an assessment method to classify generalized joint hypermobility and to further discuss its suitability for diagnostic purposes. So, unrecognized hypermobility disorders may lead to patients being denied access to appropriate healthcare. And I've actually already experienced some of this, and you probably have too. But in addition to that, it can also preclude you from getting the necessary disability support needs that will enable you to have employment or to increase your economic output and to lead a fulfilling social and family life, like live a life like the American dream or any dream of people who want to live a life.
Yeah. In general, what we're saying here is the Beighton score can kind of inadvertently be used as gatekeeping a disability diagnosis that could improve your quality of life. So the criticism of the Beighton score is related primarily to one, its pertinence, two, its narrow focus, three, the quality of research evidence, and four, bias.
Okay, I knew some of the things you mentioned, but pertinence, like relevant, like it's not even.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll
Oh,
expand on each of
yeah,
those
yeah,
points,
yeah.
kind of
Because that
explain.
that I mean, the
We'll
other
break
ones
it
I
down.
get. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, let's do
So
that.
the initial criticism of the Beighton score is related to its origins. Remember, I told you it was related to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Being,
So,
yeah.
how applicable in clinical practice are research tools when it's over a half a century old and hasn't been updated? It was just used for field research. So, the Beighton score is a tool that is now 51 years old. And since its creation in 1973, it's remained unchanged and adopted as it stands for both research purposes and for clinical diagnosis. So, the
Okay.
study that identified those particular points, those joints, had no particular evidence based justification either. Remember, I said
Oh,
they
as to why
were,
those points were chosen.
yeah,
It just happened. Okay.
so it wasn't about like a diagnostic, it was more about the ease of identifying. So the joints were chosen mainly for the functional ease of access in the field. Remember, they were studying a culture that they didn't share the language or culture. It was very different from them.
Well,
They
and those are
were
all movements you could
London-based
easily mimic.
scientists
Okay. Yeah.
studying the Bushmen of the Kalahari.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was quick, easy to perform, and it was not limited by their differences in culture and language. So two
It's also
thirds,
non-invasive physically too.
exactly, not invasive. They could do this in the field. They didn't have to like convince them to come to an examination
Right.
room or anything. Two-thirds of the joints assessed in the Beighton score are in the upper body, easily visibly seen in conversation.
Yep.
As an aside, criticism of the Beighton score should not discredit the great, amazing work of both Peter and Greta Brighton or Beighton. So zebras would not be this far along without their incredible
Oh,
dedication. No.
so okay. So that actually makes more sense when you think about it. So tell me more about the narrow focus. You mentioned like two-thirds of the upper body.
So the Beighton score only represents 9 points. So it's vital to know that if a doctor assesses your hypermobility in a rushed or cursory way, because let's be honest, they get 20 minutes to see you, a provider that's not really familiar with hypermobility disorders may inadvertently skip over some key aspects of your full health situation. So several other things should, of course, be considered. As you've been listening to us, you've probably already recognize this in yourself. Other symptoms, score adjustments may need to be made related to age, injuries, past surgeries, and then also, assessment of other joints beyond just those 9 in the assessment. So the 2017 criteria for heads standardized actually the Beighton score even more tightly to
Okay.
reduce false positives. So previously there was kind of some wiggle room on those the threshold's total score numbers. The HEADS
Oh,
criteria in 2017 actually said it's this, this, or this. Here's the age limit, and that's it. So that was previously kind of more up to a practitioner. It
I don't
was
like
more
that.
tightly
I
defined.
mean, it's already hard enough to get a diagnosis, and then you add in where the doctor has discretion to be like, meh.
So when I use the term gatekeeping, I don't think I'm exaggerating.
I agree.
So remember, this is a disorder of the connective tissues that presents as a spectrum and across multiple body systems. It varies between family members, right? So
Mhm.
with the Beighton score, whatever you want to call it, with this tool having an all or none result, there's no consideration sometimes for
Yeah,
the
there's no nuance.
degree of exactly no nuance. So the extent of multisystemic symptoms is not identified with the Beighton score. Some of the most devastating symptoms hypermobile humans face are not even addressed in that initial screening portion. The first step, we've already limited what we're examining. Okay, so additionally, as our hypermobile bodies age, the presentations progress from what they call a hypermobile phase. This is when we're really bendy without a lot of pain and without a lot of devastating consequences. Then we move into a pain phase, and that's probably when you started to seek help without answers. And then finally, what we call the stiffening phase. So
Stiffening.
Yep, here we are. By the
Very
way,
familiar with that phase.
before we even start recording, Shelly and I spend a while situating all the pillows and support and trying to get comfortable because it's difficult for us to sit still this long because of the pain and stiffness.
I need to tell you, I am so glad you're doing the majority of the talking today, because when you talk, I'm not on camera. And if I was, and people watching would just see me, I don't think I've been still this entire
We're
episode.
wiggling.
And this goddamn earbud will not stay in my fucking ear.
So I just told her that my friend was like, you know, my earbuds won't stand because our EDS skin won't even hold those in normally.
And these are the special earbuds that are supposed to stay in your ear. Like, you're supposed to be able.
Okay, so a non-official screening tool we have decided for the EDS criteria is keep your earbuds in because none of us can. Okay. Anyhow, okay, so jokes aside, yes, we stiffen as we age. And studies have shown that the Beighton score decreases with age, although pain probably and does worsen. Also, since so many of us are undiagnosed or not diagnosed into middle age, obviously the extent of our hypermobility is historical. It's our past abilities. It's not like we are current ones.
Yeah. No, I can't do a back handspring into the splits anymore.
No.
Even thinking about that makes me wanna.
Why did we do this?
Why did I do that? Well, I liked dancing. That's why I joined cheer. I joined cheer because I liked music and I wanted to dance, but then I had to be around all these bitches.
Bitches. Yeah, I know.
So, okay. So now, what do you mean about when you said there was a question as to the quality of the research? Because quality definitely matters when it comes to research.
Okay. So quality with research is also based on, like, I hate to say this, but quantity, like repetition. So part of applying medical research is replicating outcomes. So the reliability of the Beighton score has been questioned with struggles to actually reproduce the research outcomes. So used from their originating epidemiological studies in this narrow South African population. So in 2006, okay, also let me back up here. There hasn't been a lot of research in hypermobility, period.
That's okay. I was going to say that, but also, like, as you said before, hypermobility is also very individualized. So of course they're not going to be able to replicate that shit.
Yes. And so this again, the Beighton score is from early 70s. In 2006, I'll let you do the math. That was a little
not mathing
while into the future, right? So there was a study done, and it concluded that the score was insufficient for diagnosing joint hypermobility syndrome. And then in 2011, another study questioned the reliability and ability to reproduce outcomes. Okay, so that's 2 studies, even though there's very limited research on hypermobility. There's 2 studies saying we can't reproduce this. And then still, the most recent criteria for heads was published in 2017 using this Beighton score as the first step in the assessment. The initial first step of assessing for heads is using a score that is outdated and can't be reproduced. And almost as soon as the 2017 criteria for heads was released, it was scrutinized, and an international panel is currently reviewing the Beighton criteria. So it's under review. That's a good thing.
Okay, well, that's good. So it seems like they're reviewing it like they do the DSM, it's
Yeah,
just
but it's a
not,
process.
it's it's slow pain. Okay. So now we're on to, you mentioned, okay, so the bias, the gatekeeping, or no, that's not the gatekeeping. That's just different bias. So, or is it both? Which bias
So
did you?
bias is not intentional gatekeeping. Okay. So bias is something generally that we're not aware of. So bias is any factor that can skew the results or conclusions of
Oh, like
medical
confirmation bias
research.
of.
Yeah, that's a type of bias. So bias itself has been studied in many contexts, and it is known to be present for many cultural reasons, of course. Good news, I'm not going to break down any of the medical research on bias. There is some if you're interested, because that would be going down a very deep rabbit hole. But the quality and bias of the studies that have contributed to the current diagnostic methods are being examined. So the research conducted so far shows that we do not know enough about things like racial differences, but however, has shown some consistency in patterns in both age progression and more pronounced symptoms in those of us assigned female at birth. So not even going to go down that rabbit hole, but there is bias towards older people, and there is bias towards those of us that menstruate. From the 2021 article by Malik et al., which is the review of the Beighton score, quote, with regards to racial differences, several studies have shown a general trend of Caucasian, and by Caucasian, they mean white European descent, not people from the Western Caucasus, demonstrating a lower prevalence of generalized joint hypermobility, which is increased in Asian, African, and Arab populations. However, it is not yet established if this is associated with a higher prevalence of hypermobility related symptoms, with studies demonstrating conflicting results. Okay, so I'm just going to pause right here and say what is interesting in the diagnostic journey for both me and my child is that we are very white presenting. However, our dominant background is not white European, despite our visible presentation.
So your phenotype doesn't necessarily look like your genotype.
Exactly. So how you look,
biology.
how you look may present some bias in your treatment as well. We're not even go there right now. But so combine the bias with the research, combine with the bias in your own healthcare, and here we go down a rabbit hole.
And then the meta. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Okay. So continuing with Malik's article, the prevalence of hypermobility has consistently been shown, though, to be higher in females across the lifespan. That's very important. These differences become more pronounced consistently, by the way, in research around the age of 14, with females demonstrating significantly higher rates of hypermobility, while the decrease in hypermobility following adolescence is more pronounced in males. So the prevalence rates of hypermobility within specific age groups are difficult to accurately discern due to sample ages and sex varying considerably within studies. So if we repeated studies with consistent samples, then maybe we'd be able to better compare. However, hypermobility has definitely consistently shown to be highly prevalent in the youngest children and has been shown to decrease with age, falling rapidly throughout childhood, and then at a slower rate during adulthood. So the collective findings of this article reviewed multiple research studies, demonstrated a need for a change in critical thinking. The Beighton score should not be used as the principal tool to differentiate between localized and generalized hypermobility, nor used alone to exclude the presence of hypermobility.
Okay.
Greater emphasis should be placed on a clinician's judgment to identify and exclude hypermobility according to its full definition. So it's pretty clear that further research is needed to better understand joint hypermobility and how it presents in the various forms of EDS and the other related irritable connective tissue disorders, and to find the most effective method with which to clinically identify these presentations. Okay, this article, God bless them, God bless her, does not mince words. Okay, it raises ethical concerns when it appears a diagnosis is restricted to meet a specific prevalence rate rather than reflecting the actual physiological presentation of a condition. Now, when I tell you that this is an underdiagnosed disorder, and the prevalence is not actually understood, I'm going to tell you that there is some unpublished research. The general terms that are being thrown around by the folks at USC looking for the HEDS gene,
right? Yeah.
they have a pool of genetics that can't even keep up with now. They are suggesting most of their genetics genomes are coming from North America, that the prevalence rate is actually 1 in 500. So what we're talking about is a health crisis, generally women. Okay. But also, so we're just gatekeeping disabled women here, generally women. There are men with this.
Generally women, and also women who are Black and brown, and like we always do.
Different cultures. And do you remember what I said? It is presenting higher in people of color.
Yeah.
Okay.
So okay. I've read a bunch. I haven't read as many articles and reviews of things as you have. And clearly we agree. Like, she did not mince words. So my question is, like, I haven't really read an article that from a medical person who is also so critical of their own field. And so, like, I feel like I could have, like, why do I relate so much to that?
That's because Dr. Malik is an EDS patient herself.
Oh,
there
of course.
is actually a lot of great research happening, and I'm gonna let you in on a secret. Often it's a fellow zebra behind the scenes. Okay, so a great hack for hypermobility
is to go into the field of hypermobility or connective tissue and research and just figure out the problem yourself.
Yeah. But for those of us that didn't make those life choices, one of the things that I enjoy, and that's why we're here, is that I like finding these other hypermobile humans that are actually in the STEM field and researching our conditions, because they relate to us, they're real, and they're doing amazing work. And some of the most helpful ways I've stayed up to date on their research and the hypermobility news is by following the social media and research being done by fellow zebras. Yeah. In a previous episode, we mentioned Dr. Courtney Gensimer, who is working on that project I mentioned to find the HEDS gene at the University of South Carolina. I've listened to interviews with her and Dr. Norris, in charge of Norris Lab there where they're studying it, who said, like, she came in and basically said, like, we really need to do this. And he listened to her. You know what I mean? And they have internships for zebras at Norris Lab at USC. That's cool. A lot of us that are younger zebras are interested in this and are making it, their life's work now to study genetics or go into medicine or nursing or something. I have a relative in nursing school right now who's greatly affected by both HEDS and endometriosis. And that's why she's in it, because she suffered so long without acknowledgement, diagnosis, and proper care. And there is research, by the way, happening quite amazingly at great lengths and maybe even at greater volumes outside of the US as well. I don't want to limit it just to the United States and the UK. There's research happening in Israel, Japan, Rome. There's amazing researchers that are very dedicated to this subject throughout the globe. We referenced an important article from last year throughout this episode by Dr. Malik. I wanted to take the time to give a little background on the lead author. Is both an EDS patient and UK PhD researcher in the field. Interestingly, part of one of my diagnoses does appear to occur more commonly in South Indian and Middle Eastern descent people, and that's why it was not initially considered for me.
Interesting.
And by the way, I am that. So not only was she part of the Beighton Score review project, but she was also the primary author of this 2021 article that proposed an updated definition of EDS-HSD and to identify potential biomarker for the EDS-HSD subtype. So if you remember that biomarker news in 2021, that was her, Dr. Malik. So their updated definition is the hypothesis that, quote, EDS-HSD could be a disorder of membrane-bound collagen, which occurs when fibroblasts can no longer attach to collagen. And that article is called The Role of Cell Adhesion and Cytoskeleton Dynamics in the Pathogenesis of the EDS Syndromes and Hypermobility Spectrum Disorders from Frontiers in Developmental Biology. So when I tell you, these are very nerdy, amazing zebras doing amazing work. Yeah, so she's part of also something called Heads Together, TE.
I like it.
Neurodivergent joke. So Heads.
I'm got my phone out now. I'm getting on Twitter to find her.
Which is a great website to use as another resource that is also UK based. This is where she's based out of. You can find her on Twitter as well, and we'll link that also.
She needs more followers. She only has 3,200 followers.
But that's how I learned about the biomarker discovery. Was from her and from her Twitter.
Okay. Well, now she has one more follower. I just followed her.
So some other zebras that we haven't mentioned on the show yet that are also great resources are Dr. Sharon Muglatheory, MD, who has a very interesting website dedicated to her theory. So she is also a super science nerd, obviously. She is both a board-certified psychiatrist and internal medicine physician. And she originated what is known as what she calls the Rccx theory, which she theorizes may explain overlapping syndromes associated with chronic illness, including hypermobile EDS, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, Lyme disease, MCAS, POTS, pain, psychiatric spectrums, immunological, and endocrine issues, as well as the neuropsychiatric markers that predict the risk associated with these disorders.
Ooh. Check her out.
We'll link her website as well. Yep. And then one I haven't mentioned yet before either is Dr. Emily Casanova, who is a PhD and has an interesting blog and Twitter, which we'll link. And she is an assistant professor of psychology at Loyola University, but she did also work at Norris Lab at USC. She is a neuroscientist.
Nice.
And neurodivergent human. And biological scientist with a primary focus on my favorite intersection, the inherited connective tissue disorders and autism. Awesome. And she has both a blog and a Twitter. Sweet. So I will warn you that these tweets are spicy, y'all.
Oh, yeah.
No, these
like people, Shelly spicy? Like Shelly spicy?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Dr. Reinhold kills me. I mean, like, I like these people. I've never met them. I've talked to Courtney Gensimer, but I haven't talked to anybody else. I would love to. I would love to get all these people in a room, and I'm sure I know they've been in a room. Some of them have met each other and they have, Anyhow, there are zebras in STEM, and they're making a difference.
Good.
And so my life hack today for hypermobility hacking is find those zebras in the field and follow them on social media and stalk them for all the updates.
Yeah. For the updates only. Don't actually stalk them.
Don't actually stalk them. Courtney's on TikTok with us.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
Does she follow me?
She did officially receive her PhD. She's no longer a candidate. Yeah.
Well, congratulations, Courtney. Yeah. Dr. Courtney. Does she follow me or just you? You have so many more followers than me.
I don't know. I think
it's because I'm older and I don't know what the deal. I don't really care anymore.
I have made a lot of videos about medical research.
You do more of that. I'm more random. I like to be random.
That's okay.
I'm fine with it. I just am sometimes sometimes I'll post something really good and I'm like, this is good.
And why did I all the time?
And then 4 people like
things that I think are important never take off.
Yeah.
Although I do stupid little things.
I do have one that's getting a lot of visibility now, and it's good because it's a duet with an intersex human, and I'm talking about social constructs of gender. And what's surprising is I just duetted that and added some commentary from my undergraduates in anthropology, and I am surprised. I mean, the original video did gangbusters. the human's original video. But then my video has over 200,000 views and like thousands of shares and stuff. And I'm like, this is just me duetting it. But that's
And
good because
also,
the
you
visibility.
should know that there's a higher instance of not just overlaps that I mentioned with the connective tissue disorders and neurodivergencies such as autism, but also with those of us that have gender differences or that are in the queer community, period.
Yeah.
So,
There's the overlap with the Rainbow
I
Mafia.
actually made a joke video that went viral saying, hey, did y'all hear about the new criteria for heads? And people took me literally.
Oh, they really did. I remember that. That was.
And what was funny, the person like who stitched it is studying in graduate school for genetics.
Yeah.
Also, I'm super proud of her. She's in Maryland.
She's from Maryland?
Yes, she's near you.
Oh.
Yeah. So, but she's also someone else in STEM. I mean, she hasn't graduated yet or anything. But my point is, like, she makes jokes all the time, and we've laughed so hard about like how we make jokes but we don't get other people's jokes.
Yeah.
And she meets the criteria of all three of those things, as do I. And she really thought that I had found, like, I had the inside scoop and knew.
She's like, hell yeah, what's this criteria?
Yeah, she really thought that I knew the new criteria for heads. And I was like, oh, no, y'all,
Okay.
it's a joke. It was a joke. You missed the rainbow.
Well, okay. So we're on this topic. How long are we stuck with this old criteria? Like, when do we have any idea of when they're going to have some updates? Inside information?
I don't have a ton of inside information. I do know that this research and these groups of people are talking, and I do follow. But so there are some different approaches to identifying hypermobility that were not used in the 2017 criteria. So I'm not going to break them all down, but so for example, there is an alternative 10-point scale. So it looks at more parts and has a wider view of joint
knees and shoulders.
And so this is from the Hospital Del Mar in Barcelona, Spain. Like I said, it's not just the US and the UK that's doing this research. So they include the shoulder, the hip, the patella, which is
good, more points for me.
Your ankle, your foot, and your toes. And so honestly, if I can tell you, if Shelly were to go through this and I were to go through this, we would.
You should see my toes. They're actually contained in socks today, but they're novel socks. I can wear socks if they have novel. I'll show them to you later when we're done with this.
We only wear socks if they're okay, anyhow. But it does seem that a new approach is forthcoming. But like everything, in medicine, it takes further study and let's make sure this is reproducible and validate
peer review
that sort of
it
thing. Right. And also, this is still considered a rare disorder, even though I said it's just not as rare as we're led to believe it is. It's still considered rare, so it doesn't have the best visibility. It did so the EDS Society did get some amazing funding more recently and does have an increase in research happening. But I'm just going to leave this here. I want to read out the conclusion of Dr. Malik's 2021 critical article on the Beighton Score.
Okay.
So, alternative assessment methods and tools exist. However, with over 300 joints in the body, it is very unlikely any single assessment method will ever truly capture all variable presentations of generalized joint hypermobility. Okay. Pause, this is me talking. For example, did you know that it's likely that you experience hypermobility in your ears? This is something I didn't even consider, and I have such severe tinnitus and hearing difficulty and sensorineural hearing loss, and we have jaw issues, and they're all seem to be interrelated. And this is some of the biggest annoyances that me and my child face, and it causes migraines. And it's hypermobile ears. So even the tiniest bones in your body are affected by this.
So is that why when I was a child, I had so many goddamn ear infections?
Quite possibly. But also, we tend to have issues with immune
sinuses. Okay.
It's a complex answer. I don't know. So anyhow, moving on. So consequently, this has highlighted the desperate need for a clinically significant diagnostic marker or markers for the hypermobility disorders. that would render such assessment methods redundant. Until such a time comes, use of the Beighton score as a diagnostic tool should be used as one with caution. It's useful, but not the end-all be-all, and it should not be the gatekeeper, okay? So indeed, this review has demonstrated that changing clinical thinking is required. In particular, the current use of a negative Beighton score to exclude the presence of generalized joint hypermobility is a practice that must be discontinued. This is not diagnostically inaccurate, but could deny a patient their fundamental right to diagnosis or even identification. So when I tell you my mother I don't even think she would get a 1, and she has some of the most devastating EDS diagnoses available. Okay. So hence, we're potentially denying a patient their fundamental right to a correct diagnosis and hence access to appropriate support. This is an ethical concern. Instead, the Beighton score should be used as intended. In other words, as an initial screening method, after which other notable joints, for example, the shoulder, hips, ankles, remaining digits, could be examined until the clinician is satisfied with no evidence of systemic joint hypermobility, and then, do that conclusively, nor any associated syndromic feature before excluding the heritable connective tissue disorders as a diagnosis. So that's my point. The other heritable connective tissue disorders don't all present with these either. So
right.
you're potentially, and the ones we do know the gene score can be very devastating and frequently do not pass this scoring tool. Okay, so greater emphasis should now be placed on a clinician's judgment and experience, obviously, to identify or exclude generalized joint hypermobility according to its actual definition, the presence of joint hypermobility at both the major and minor joints of the four limbs and axial or core part of the skeleton throughout. The whole body should be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so it's obvious that more research is needed, but are we missing the bigger picture by just focusing solely on hypermobility? So whatever the best outcomes are from when you identify it early, right? I think back, how much better off could I have been if they had known?
Yeah.
Right. So this is so exciting because this current research, if they find the gene, I can't move forward because of my mic. I keep forgetting. Yeah. So you mentioned the funding. They're doing that gap research is what it's called, right? Mm-hmm. It's been funded further, right? Yeah. If I'm reading this correctly. So now their goal is to fully understand it, find the underlying causes, and develop better diagnostic tests besides these, because there really isn't one.
So what we're finding and what we've been discussing is that this is really a spectrum of disorders. It presents very widely, although there's a lot of commonality. And once we find each other, we are usually stunned at our common experience. However, we have not found a way to clinically diagnose and assess it. Regardless, it's really encouraging how much opportunity in research there is and forward movement in the study of hypermobile humans. The goal for us as bendy people should be to have the opportunity to just improve the quality of our life and legacy that we leave to our children that inherit our disorders. But in the meantime, these are the current guidelines used by doctors to evaluate your hypermobility symptoms on the diagnostic journey. So it's important to know the details as a zebra, not only to know what to expect and prepare yourself, but to know when and how to advocate for a more in-depth critical assessment of your health and to say, oh, no, wait, what about this?
Yeah. I'm just
Shelley's putting things together, I think, right now.
Yeah.
Tell me.
I'm so grateful that I found this community and you and all these people, but it makes me mad too, all over again.
I know.
I'm getting better at the rage, just because I finally feel like I'm getting onto that path of
I said that in a room full of zebras, the elephant in the room is the trauma. Us having to deal with the medical gaslighting, the systemic effects of this and the long-term effects, not just in our lives, but how it affects generations, our
Yeah.
family lives. We're constantly having to do the work of facing, and it's frustrating to think, well, what if I had had some help with this back when I was a teenager?
Right.
So that's why we're doing what we're doing. And that's why we want to empower you to have the knowledge that maybe we didn't have on this journey, and to know how and when to advocate for yourself, what to expect, what the pitfalls are. The current state of medicine, when you go see a doctor, they don't know all these things. Even probably some in the field that you may be referred to just aren't that up to date or interested in the connective tissue disorders.
Yeah.
The doctors like rheumatologists, geneticists, they don't all work in this narrow field. So they may not be aware of these concerns that we've just expressed to you. So you are going to have to be aware of saying, well, wait a minute, what about all these rolled ankles?
Right.
Things like that. So stay tuned, and next time we'll delve deeper into the rest of the criteria for hypermobile EDS. We'll go down the page with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So thanks for listening. And I don't know. This is weird. You switched it up on me. I'm used to saying
did.
I know.
Me
And
too.
I asked you to switch it up on me, and now I can't do it.
Yeah,
I'm a mess. So
I
go
did
ahead and
what
say it.
Shelley asked.
Yes, I asked to not always be plugging our show, and you did it. And then now I read my part and I'm like, oh, I can't read it.
Okay,
Anyway,
so
listen to us and share it. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for listening to the Hacking Hypermobility podcast. We appreciate you being here, taking the time to hang out with us and try to follow along. We would really appreciate it if you would take the extra step to take a minute to share or follow or leave us a review. I mean, really, please, on whatever platform you're listening to, leave us a review, a star, a rating, whatever it is, wherever you are. It helps us to grow the podcast, get visibility. And I don't care about that for us, Shelley. It makes us feel icky. But what we really care about and what we're passionate about is spreading awareness because of what we just talked about, how important it is to us to change the state of our quality of life and diagnosis, and awareness helps, and nobody else is speaking for us. And as I think I just demonstrated, we're doing the research too. By we, I don't mean me and Shelley, I mean other zebras. The science is being done by the people in this. So, I mean, come help these zebras that are doing the research. Scream it louder for them. Anyhow, thank you. Try to give us a share. Give us a little plug.
If you're on any socials and you just share the link.
Yeah.
Say, hey, listen to this. I know some of our episodes are longer. We try to break it up into parts to keep it manageable, and I try to label them in a way that makes sense so you guys can find it. And this one's going to be shorter.
And we put our little resources on the blog on our website too, and it has a link to our own TikTok pages if you like short, digestible, slightly funny videos. We do a lot of content on both neurodivergence and being hypermobile in the intersections, as well as some of our special interests.
Yeah, I have like a lot of gardening stuff and some cannabis stuff, and I have a lot of cat stuff. My cats have a page. The other thing is I love nerdy t-shirts. And so if you have an idea or if you want to see me wear something,
send us a submission.
Send us, or I mean, maybe I should get us a PO box and people can like send us funny stuff. My shirt today says Vote Tyrion 2012. Lannister. A Lannister always pays his national debts. And
I didn't even read the subtitle. That makes it even funnier.
Yeah. So this shirt, a lot of my fun shirts were gifts from my cousin, who is like my sister. She's not even a year younger than me, but she sends me all the best shirts for my birthday. And then I send her. Actually, the shirt I was wearing, the Doctor Who shirt with Maleficent, that was a gift from her. Anyway.
I love that we're both Maleficent people. I think that's
something. Yeah.
Are you a Maleficent person, listener?
Are you? Do you like Maleficent? I love Maleficent. I need to get my Maleficent tattoo. I haven't done that yet. But what I was going to say, the reason why I decided to wear the vote is because I don't know when our next episode is going to be recorded. And the midterm elections are coming up. And voting is very important. And I'm not going to tell you how to vote because that's not what I do. But I just want you to think about the most marginalized person you know. think about that person and vote with that person in mind.
I will second that. I would say if you're going to take some time to educate yourself on the local politics options in your area too.
Yeah, it starts with the school boards.
Yep.
Seriously.
Amen. Well, anyhow, I love you, Shelley. Thank you for being my zebra cousin.
I love you. Thank you for being my Shelley.
Oh. Well, wishing you all a happy and healthy hypermobility day.
Yeah.
Have a happy day, zebras.
Happy day, zebras. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, pretty kitty. Meow, meow.